Oh, we're on. And good evening. Welcome to Transportation and Parking Commission meeting of City of Glendale. It's June 23rd, 2025, and I'm Lilia Avakian, the Chair of Transportation Commission. So let's go to roll call.
Roll call. Commissioner Bartrusov,
Here.
Commissioner Bonston,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubegian, skip, Commissioner Shahbazian,
Here.
Chair Avagian,
Here.
Student Commissioner McCurchin, Student Commissioner Torres.
Here.
Okay, let's rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda.
Posting of the agenda. The agenda for the June 23rd, 2025 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by June 20, 2025 before 5 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Okay. Anyone has comments, or should we move to? Okay, it's. Anyone has comments? If not, then can I have a motion?
Is it commission comments? Yeah, I just had one quick comment.
No, about the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Agenda.
No,
Okay. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I was going to say I first did. Yes.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bonston. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Shahbazian to approve the minutes. Roll call.
Commissioner Bartrusov,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubegian, Commissioner Shahbazian, Chair Avagian.
Yes. Okay, next item. Presentation? No.
Presentations. There are no presentations on the agenda.
Next item.
Consent items. There are no consent items on the agenda.
Okay, let's move to the action item, number 6.
Item 6A, report regarding speed safety limit changes on various city streets. Motion recommending the adoption of an ordinance amending Glendale Municipal Code Section 10-24-020 relating to prima facie speed limits on a non-local city streets.
That might be the second.
Good evening, Chair Vagian and Commissioners. My name is Carlos Cortez. I'm a civil engineering assistant with Public Works Department. I'm here to present the proposed adjustments to speed limits on various City of Glendale streets. Next slide. To begin, the City of Glendale must periodically review and adjust speed limits on city streets. An engineering and traffic survey, or ENTS, is how we gather data to set speed limits that can be legally enforced with radar. We recently completed surveys on 29 segments citywide, and those surveys show that many of our current speed limits can be lowered to better match actual driving speeds and improve safety. These proposed changes are in line with recent changes in state law, specifically Assembly Bill 43, which gives cities more flexibility to reduce speed limits for safety reasons. Next slide. Not all streets need an engineering survey for speed limits. For example, residential and business district streets in California have a prima facie speed limit of 25 miles per hour. These are governed by state law. However, for busier and larger roads, like arterial and collector streets, the city must conduct an engineering and traffic survey and then establish that limit by local ordinance to set speed limits higher or lower than 25 miles per hour. Glendale Municipal Code 10.24.020 lists those speed limits for our non-local streets. Next slide. An engineering and traffic survey, ENTS for short, is essentially a formal study to determine what speed limits should be on a given street. Under California law, Vehicle Code 627 and NTS looks at several factors like prevailing speeds, collision history, roadway conditions, land use, pedestrian and bicycle activity, By considering all these factors, the ENTS helps set a speed limit that is reasonable and safe for the road. Next slide. For radar surveys, the speeds of at least 100 free-flowing vehicles in each direction are recorded. Free-flowing means we avoid times when traffic is congested or backed up, such as peak hours, to capture typical speeds when drivers aren't impeded. From this, we determine the 85th percentile speed. That's the speed or at or below which 85% of drivers are driving. Next slide. California engineers follow the requirements and guidelines set in the following 3 key documents for establishing speed limits: the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD, the California Vehicle Code, CVC, and the California Manual for Setting Speed Limits. Next slide. Under the California MUTCD and state law, we use the measured 85th percentile speed and round it to the nearest 5 mile per hour increment. For example, if the 85th percentile speed is 37 miles per hour, we round down to 35 miles per hour. If the 85th percentile is 38 miles per hour, we round up to 40 miles per hour. Next slide. In 2021, authored by Laura Friedman, Assembly Bill 43 was introduced due to a statewide effort recognizing that more tools are needed to set and lower speed limits. AB 43 took effect January 1st, 2022, with the goal to help reduce traffic injuries and fatalities. The bill implemented recommendations from the California State Transportation Agency Zero Traffic Fatalities Task Force as part of California's Vision Zero effort. Next slide. AB 43 introduced many new tools for engineers to use to set speed limits. The bill introduced CVC 22358.6 to allow the rounding down to the nearest 5 mile per hour increment of the 85th percentile speed. It is no longer required to round up. CVC 22358.7 allows the reduction of the speed limit by an additional 5 miles per hour beyond that rounding down with the appropriate justifications. These justifications include if the street segment is in a designated safety corridor, which is a stretch of road identified for special safety focus due to collisions, or near areas with high pedestrian or bicycle concentrations, such as schools, senior centers, parks, and transit stops. Next slide. The bill amended sections of the CVC allowing local authorities to set speed limits as low as 15 miles per hour for businesses or residential districts meeting specific criteria. AB 43 also added 2 new sections to CVC. CVC 22358.8 permits cities to retain the current speed limit if a traffic engineer concludes that raising the speed would be unsafe and the physical characteristics of the road has not changed. CVC 22358.9 permits cities to set the speed limit to 25 or 20 miles per hour for business activity districts. For this round of speed limit updates, this CVC was not applicable. Next slide. By law, an ENTS has a shelf life typically of 7 years, and it can be extended up to 14 years in certain cases. This extension was also part of AB 43. Any change to the posted speed limits requires updating the local ordinance, Municipal Code 10.24020. Next slide. Glendale has 95 street segments in our ordinance that need engineering and traffic surveys to establish speed limits. By the end of this year, 2025, we identified 29 segments where the surveys would expire. For each of these 29 segments, 85th percentile speeds were measured, and staff has recommended speed limits using the new tools introduced in AB 43. Staff recommends the lowering of speed limits for 20 of these 29 segments. The 9 remaining segments will maintain its current speed limit. Next slide. Staff recommends a 5 mile per hour speed limit reduction to the following segments listed on this table. As you can see on the left, it's the existing speed limit. On the right, proposed speed limit. These are the first 10. Next slide. And these are the next 10 for a total of 20. With the exception of Honolulu Avenue and Orangedale Avenue, Honolulu Avenue between Orangedale Avenue and Verdugo Road, we lowered that by 10 from 25 to 15 miles per hour. Next slide. So these are the remaining street segments. These will not change. And there is an error on the staff report for number 8, Grandview from Flower Street to Glen Oaks Boulevard. On the staff report, it says 35, but it's actually 25. It is not changing. Next slide. Fiscal impact. So city staff estimates a one-time cost of approximately $75,000 to complete all speed limit updates. Approximately $25,000 will go toward the new speed limit signs. Approximately $50,000 is for signal timing modifications. This cost involves traffic engineering staff time to recalculate timing plans, implementation, and fine-tuning those plans at intersections along the corridors that we're changing. Funding for this work is already included in the fiscal year 25-26 Public Works budget. Next slide. Ultimately, staff recommends that the Transportation and Parking Commission approve the motion recommending the adoption of an ordinance detailed in Exhibit A to update the Glendale Municipal Code 10.24.020. This update will reflect all the speed limit changes discussed tonight for those 20 street segments. We thank you for your time and consideration. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Can we please go back to this slide where it was showing the speed limits of whatever changed, and then the next one that remained the same?
Which, with the tables?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So these?
Yes, those are the ones. So these are the ones that changed. And then, okay, I was trying to see if Central Boulevard is one of those.
Central Boulevard?
Yes.
Central Avenue?
Central Avenue. Central Avenue. And have we ever considered of changing the speed limit for Central Avenue or no?
We do have our current speed surveys at the moment. We can check those if you want. We have them for all of them, Central Avenue, so we can check if Central Avenue is on that list. At the moment, Central Avenue between San Fernando Road, from Central Avenue between San Fernando Road and Colorado Street, we're changing from 35 to 30. But we can go ahead and check if
Oh, here.
other
Central.
street segments are being changed as well.
Oh, so that's being changed, but from Colorado to, I mean, the downtown area. Sorry, I didn't notice that. My
Yeah, so
bad.
they're
Uh,
in street segments. So it might not be all the segments on a corridor. These are just the ones that are expiring at the moment.
Oh, okay. Because my question is because the downtown area part, where we have a lot of pedestrians walking, that part basically is remaining 30 or 35. What is it currently? 35? The entire Central Avenue from San Fernando to Glen Oaks.
Yes, 35.
It's 35. So Brent is 25.
Yes.
And it has almost the same livelihood as Central Avenue. And there are a lot of people walking or passing the street from Glendale Galleria to Central. And we're basically not considering changing that part, but rather changing the part up to Colorado, which is not that walkable at this point.
Good afternoon, or good evening, Chair Avagian and Commissioners. Is this on? So in answer to your question, that's true. On this particular round, we'll call it, it's the first phase of our update. So these are capturing all those street segments where the engineering and traffic surveys were expiring. So Central is one of them. There's also other street segments where there may be a change in one segment, but not the other. But that's going to be part of phase 2 for the next round of locations that are expiring. We took that approach because, as you noticed, there's also a component to install new signs, to update the traffic signal timing. And it would be kind of an overwhelming effort to do the whole city at once. So what we're doing and moving forward is tackling them as the engineering and traffic surveys expire for each segment.
And then one more question. So I noticed that we're basically, the only change that we're doing is lowering the speeds. I mean, it is definitely for safety and it's better, but I mean, is there a reason why we are certain things, like, for example, I keep referring to Central, but like San Fernando to Colorado, what is the reason why making it from 35 to 30? Because that part is, how is it gonna, even though if it's expiring, like what kind of a good benefit is it giving by changing it to lowering it?
Sure. So what we can say is the general approach with the new state policy, which is this Assembly Bill 43, it gives cities more flexibility to be able to not only lower the speeds, in some cases leave them the same as they are, to prevent what they call speed creep. Because traditionally before this assembly bill, essentially you set the speed limit at how fast people are driving. So the higher speed they drive, the speeds tend to creep up. So with this new bill and this new law, it gives us that flexibility to not just unilaterally lower it, but look at those street segments that would benefit from the lowered speed. So for example, in San Fernando Road, can certainly bring up the engineering and traffic survey, but generally the the assembly bill allows us to consider a couple of things. One, as Mr. Cortez mentioned, we can round down instead of up. So let's say in the example that was given of 38 miles per hour, instead of rounding up to 40, we could just automatically round down to 35. Then what we look at is the context of the street, on whether or not there's high pedestrian generators or active transportation generators, vulnerable user generators in the area, which are the manuals that we look at, the state manuals, give us a list of different types of locations, such as churches, transit stops, schools, and that sort of thing. So in the context of San Fernando Road, those are the type of things that we looked at.
Okay, got it. Thank you very
Sure.
much.
Sure.
I have a couple comments and a question. I was on the commission a couple years ago when you brought other segments. So it sounds like every few years more segments are brought as they are kind of ready for expiring. And it was before the state bill was effective. And I remember it being very fascinating but confusing that they had just kind of looked at the speeds and rounded everything up. And you were kind of questioning, like, it doesn't mean that people should be going that fast. It might not even be safe to be that fast. So it's really nice to see someone a former council member, no less, kind of sponsoring a bill that is impactful. And again, I remember it from a couple years ago, so I think this is a great improvement. I had a question. So the Exhibit A, the bolded are the ones that are changing, is that right?
Yes, those are the ones that we reviewed and are changing, yes.
And then I had just a clarifying question too. Number 57 on Exhibit A, is that Glendale Avenue and not Boulevard?
You said 57?
Yes.
Yes, we are changing that. That is a typo. So we are going to go back and change this to Glendale Avenue. Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
I have a couple questions. I'll save my, do you want me to do questions and comments, or do you want to save comments for when a motion is made?
No, I think we should probably, before we get to voting, let's do the comments and
Okay, great.
questions, everything.
I'll stick to questions only.
Questions and comments. No, and let's do the
okay,
comments too
great.
before we get to the voting.
Okay, couple questions. I did notice, I'm pleasantly surprised that staff is looking forward to changing the speed limit in the Montrose Shopping Park area to 15 miles an hour. Can you further, I'm not complaining, but I'd like for you to be able to explain how you got to that conclusion, just for the public's awareness, because that one stood out to me and is an unusual recommendation.
Yes.
So I'd like for staff to elaborate on how that decision was made.
Of course, Commissioner. Honolulu Avenue, it's heavily populated, a lot of businesses in that area. So we looked at the 85th percentile, which was 20.5. So 20.5, we rounded down to 20. And then based off AB 43, 22358.7, we're able to lower an additional 5 miles per hour depending on the generators that are listed in the MUTCD. In this case, retail. We have a lot of uncontrolled crosswalks, multiple traffic calming island diverters. So we felt that it was appropriate to lower it down to 15 miles per hour, especially since it's one way each direction. So we felt confident in recommending 15 miles per hour in that location.
Okay, great. That's good. And I guess I'll be curious to see what recommendations like that will be made moving forward. Some locations that come to mind could be Adams Square, Kenneth Village, other neighborhood-focused commercial areas that come to mind where this may be considered moving forward. So I don't know where those are in the queue. Perhaps they'll be looked at in the coming years, but I am curious about those locations since the characteristics and land use are similar. And then the other question that I'd like to dive into is I'm very much curious in the methodology of things. As a transportation planner myself, I'd like to know how the city conducts its traffic data. The 100 cars that you evaluate to determine the speed, which is the data that you're taking in to then make these informed decisions, I didn't quite catch whether you said the data is collected during off-peak or during peak. Can you clarify or remind me what you said?
It's collected during off-peak, free-flowing traffic, yes.
Okay, great. And I was a little surprised by the number. It seems like 100 cars being captured can be done relatively quickly, especially depending on the time of day that you've chosen. So is the 100-car survey a standard protocol by MUTCD? Is it something that the city has sanctioned as acceptable? I suspect it wouldn't take very long to capture that data, let's say 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm just wondering, is that very small window of time representative of true off-peak speeds? So if you could elaborate on that and help me understand.
That is something I'll let my principal traffic engineer answer.
Commissioner Bartusoff, great question. That methodology is straight from the California Manual on Setting Speed Limits, so we follow the state standards.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else has a question? Sure, Commissioner Ordobegian.
Good afternoon. Sorry for being late. I just noticed you had speed reductions on Honolulu Avenue. Is that correct? From 35 miles to 30 miles, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct. I can look it up real quick.
This subject came up on Montrose Shopping Park Association. There were a couple of factors in there. The crosswalks needed some updating. They're all deteriorated. Some lightings, and we also talked about the point where the BID ends, which is right where the Trader Joe's starts. There were issues on that intersections, so people were driving fast. So one of the options was to reduce it from 35 to 30, but all the other options, as far as the light, the crosswalks being more visible, and we did a walkthrough with you guys as well. Are those being implemented or talked about? Because we need to take that back to association and find out exactly which one works best for that neighborhood. Is that something that it's in your purview, or we need to, this is a done deal? Or
Commissioner Ordobegian, so the field walk that we had about a month or so ago, we certainly have that on our radar. This is a separate process that looked at engineering and traffic surveys that were expiring in the city, and we redid them applying the new, the state law, Assembly Bill 43, flexibility that it gives cities to lower speeds when appropriate. So it's kind of a separate thing, but we definitely have that on our radar.
yeah, my only concern is that I want to be able to see everything to be combined together, not to do just implement one thing and then not to mention those other issues that we saw together, because they go hand in hand and they complement one another. So whatever decision we're going to be making on that, as a matter of fact, I'm in favor of reducing the speed limit on Honolulu, because people, especially now that the population has been quadrupled in that neighborhood, we want to be able to make it much safer for everybody who visits Montrose or who works there or lives there. But we want to be able to see all of those things being in conjunction with one another, and to be able to complement one another. just the speed limit reductions, I don't think it's going to cut it. It has to be all those things that we talked about and we did a walkthrough together. So hopefully that could be implemented at the same time.
Certainly, Commissioner. It's a piece of the puzzle. And again, we went through a lot of different items that day. It's on our radar. And we're just going to proceed as we can, a step-by-step approach. And to clarify, the 30 miles per hour you mentioned is on Honolulu from La Crescenta to Orangedale, which is around where the Trader Joe's is. And then as you get into the area that's one lane in each direction with the diverters and the 6 uncontrolled crosswalks, that's being lowered to 15 miles per hour.
And that's the only thing that we talked about with the board of directors as well. So I don't know if the speed limit at that 15 miles is something doable. I don't want it to be implemented and taken away. So please, before we vote on it, make sure the board chime in on it and listen to the representative as far as if they think that that's something feasible and doable for that area. And then I'm personally in favor of reduction, but from 30 to 15, it may create a little bit of traffic jam and things like that in there. So we need to study it a little bit longer to understand exactly where that speed limit comes in handy. So let's have that under consideration as well.
Certainly, certainly.
Questions?
I have a few questions and maybe a clarification. The first question is, thank you for clarifying that the Grandview, because I was ready to ask questions about that. I appreciate it. And then before my other question, I'm just curious if we share this data with the police department, because at the end of the day, I'm just curious to know, I mean, we want them to be on board and be able to do the citations when needed. I'm just curious if we have any feedback from the police department, or this is something that we adopt and then automatically, they just start following the new numbers.
Commissioner Shabazian, a good question, and there's definitely coordination between Public Works and the Police Department. Our plan is to come before the TPC, get your input, hopefully your support, and then we reach out to the Police Department, go through it, make sure there aren't any anomalies that maybe they disagree with. Certainly, we want to come up with something that's definitely enforceable, and they're out there in the field every day. So we're definitely going to coordinate with them prior to going to the City Council.
Thank you so much for that. And then one other question. I just looking at the numbers, I noticed throughout city there are certain areas that we have 40 miles per hour, but in the current changes that we have, it's the segment, and I know it's kind of an open road right now. It's the Camino San Rafael and Cali Canta going to city limit, the border of it, which I think goes to Emerald Isle. I know that section right now is just kind of going through mountains, but it connects two neighborhoods. I'm just curious to know, and it's for my own information, why, that speed limit is so high. I can just imagine, racers going through the mountains there. Just curious if it was because of the numbers that we collected that it suggested to keep the number there. It's because of the use or the type of street it is. So I would appreciate it if you can shed some light on that.
Certainly, you're right on target. So in the latest engineering and traffic survey, the 85th percentile speed actually came out higher than we thought was appropriate. So the Assembly Bill 43 allows us to look at that new data, and if we determine that we feel that's still more than reasonable and safe, we can use the prior engineering and traffic survey, which was the case in this specific street segment. It was the only one of the 29 that we reviewed that we're going to recommend to use the prior engineering and traffic survey, because those 85th percentile speeds came out again higher.
Got it.
Yeah, so, in regards to the street type you mentioned,
Yes.
also on target that, unfortunately in that area, there are no high pedestrian generators, no transit, no crosswalks and those sorts of generators, schools. And so we were unable to take those additional reductions. So again, our recommendation is to keep the prior engineering and traffic survey.
Got it. And do we ever look at crash data when we come up with with the recommendations, or is it just a survey that we conduct? Or maybe you mentioned that and I missed it, sorry.
No, I don't think we mentioned it, but it is a component of the engineering and traffic survey form. I believe we might have attached one as a sample. And what we're using are collision rates. We also indicate the number of collisions, but what's different on these new forms that we created, we're including the rate, because sometimes the number or quantity of collisions isn't necessarily representative of what the rates are, right? What are going on depending on the volumes. So we're including the rates and the numbers, and we're comparing that to the state averages so that we can understand where this particular street segment falls. So it is one of the things that we look at.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you.
Actually, can I have another question?
Go ahead, Commissioner Boston.
I forgot to ask about this, but I noticed, and I'm just giving an example here, but Verdugo Road between Mountain and Cañada Boulevard, it lists it as 40, and I know this is a segment that's not changing. But there are portions of it with the yellow signs that actually indicate 25 miles per hour, so that's based on curves. So this isn't factoring in certain areas that the speed is lowered additionally, is that right?
No, that's a separate process. Those are advisory speeds. So those are not regulatory speeds.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yellow is,
Yeah.
you guys all know. I'm just speeding there or not.
didn't know.
Okay. And are those based on crash data, or in this instance, it's very curvy, so it makes sense to have a lowered rate?
Those are based on a separate study that we do.
I'll try to shed, these are regarding the yellow signs,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah, as Mr. Cortez mentioned, they're called advisory speed signs. So those are put up in conditions where if you're traveling at the speed limit and you're encountering a curve or a dip or what have you, and that same speed of the speed limit would cause you to not necessarily be uncontrolled, but be uncomfortable as you're going around it, then the advisory speed tells you what speed would be appropriate for that condition. So if it's a curve, we actually go out there and drive it, and there's these little devices that tells us what that percentage of comfort is, and we're able to come up with the advisory speed and post it for drivers so they'll know if you drive 20 miles per hour around this curve, it's a safe speed to traverse the curve.
Okay, I have a follow-up. And if that's advisory at the time that you go through and look at speed limits, does that ever get changed down to be regulatorily required to be slower?
It doesn't, because that condition is specific to that curve. So
Yeah, that's so interesting that that's not regulated, though, because that area in particular has a lot of crashes, single-car crashes from speeding vehicles on the curves.
yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
that's prompting a question, if you don't mind, Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
Does staff by chance have that traffic analysis for that particular segment? I am curious what the survey results show for that corridor.
Yes, we do. At the moment, we do.
Okay, and I'll talk a little while you get that data together. I'm thank you for catching that. I didn't catch that while reading the staff report. That is an interesting segment, as we've suggested, because of the curves and the particularly high speeds. I have a high school friend who actually got into a car crash along that corridor and had a skull fracture as a result of it. And those curves are really dangerous if you're going the official speed limit, of course, which is why we have those advisory speed limits. So I am curious where the results landed, and if we were closer to 35, if you've made a recommendation tilting into one direction over the other. I'm curious to hear more about that.
Okay, sure. So just to confirm, the segment is Verdugo Boulevard between Verdugo Road and the easterly city limit. Is that the section? Are we
No,
talking?
Correct.
Is that one of the ones on the list? That's, okay. So we don't have that data available for the new surveys, but we did bring the old surveys, so I can pull those out. Excuse me for a second.
Maybe I'm And sorry, maybe I'm throwing you off. It's, so I'm looking at Exhibit A. I guess this is page 14 or 13 of the staff report. And it's segment 58, Verdugo Road between Mountain and Cañada. So it shows the speed limit is 40. It may be that this segment is not part of this study package. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Exhibit A, all the locations that are shown in bold are the locations that are changing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Sorry to throw you all off.
No problem, no problem. But we'll look up Verdugo, the existing one that's set to 40 miles per hour.
I think there are items 57, 58, and 60, if that's what you're looking for on
Okay,
Exhibit A.
so we got Verdugo Road Mountain to Cañada, 40 miles per hour. And your question was what the 85th percentile speed was? It is 44 miles per hour. And it's 45 in the northbound direction, 42 in the southbound direction, and the average 85th percentile was 44.
How are we able to go to 40? Sorry, I'm jumping in with a random question.
Well, this goes back to the prior laws.
Yeah.
So the 44 would be rounded to 45, and then there was an allowance for a 5 mile per hour reduction.
And
at
when
that
was
time as
that
well.
surveyed?
This was surveyed in 2020.
Can I ask a follow-up as part of, like, jump into your, so in your consideration for when that becomes, the time is up and it's time to evaluate, would there ever be a consideration of putting a different speed limit that's regulatory in the area? Like, do the segments have to stay as they are? Or might you break up a segment to have a portion of it at a slower speed? Like, knowing the information that we have on that, does that change any part of this process?
Well, I think there are two questions, right? Can we separate the street segments depending on the data that's coming in? But normally the street segments are configured depending on the roadway conditions, say the type of land use that's around, the number of lanes, whether there's sidewalks or not, shoulders, just different elements. So I think we would likely leave the segments the way they are because the street segments haven't changed in context. However, in going back and surveying this location, we have new tools available with AB 43 that we can apply. So I guess we'll get to that when we do this next survey. But it's on our radar for the ones that are coming up. Sure.
Sorry, just to follow up regarding the segments, when surveying and making a recommendation, how are we basically taking into consideration the enforceability of that part? Because if it's too separated and too segmented, I understand when it's an advisory, we're definitely thinking that people are going to slow down because it's a safety factor and they should definitely slow down. But that's not something that they're going to get stopped and get ticketed. And then if we're making it for sure, okay, you have to segment, you have to slow down because this is the speed limit. How are we enforcing it? Let's say if they passed through that small portion, and I just can't picture it myself. How are we going to enforce that regulation? What are we going to do for people to follow it for sure? Has that been easily enforceable previously if we have cases like that are small segments changing the limits constantly? So I don't know if I'm making sense. It's like speeding 101 class for me today. What? Sure.
Yes.
I think I had the same question too. When we're talking about mountain to, let's say, Verdugo, a portion of it. Let's say if you do that part at 25 miles an hour, then from, let's say, third block, you're going to make it 35. And then from fourth block, you're going to bring it down to 20. Isn't that going to be confusing for people? Because, you're going to drive. You're not going to constantly look at, oh, well, it said 35. I'm going to go 35. Oh, it's 25. I got to reduce it down. that creates more confusion than it helps people to slow down. So all we're doing is we're creating an element of frustration for people who are trying to go from A to B, and let's say it's a 5 minutes drive, and we're creating like 3 or 4 different kind of, speed zones, which I don't think it's feasible for the city or for the people who live within the vicinity and trying to get to their place that they want. So, for example, I'm on Cañada Boulevard going up, and I'm looking at the first sign, and the sign says 30 miles an hour, and I'm driving at 30 miles an hour, and I don't notice that, let's say I'm listening to music or I'm driving, and I'm assuming that the mileage is at 30, and all of a sudden it drops to 20 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, oh, okay, I'm gonna stop. That creates a lot of confusion. So if you're doing speed reduction, it needs to be at least, 7 or 8 or 10 blocks. Or if you're doing it at one point, we're trying to reduce it, let's reduce it for the entire, lane that it's there, because keep on
Thank you
taking it
very
off,
much.
taking it down, it's just crazy, you can't enforce it. You can't ask people, because then you're going to say, well, it says 30. It says, no, look over here, 25. Oh, I didn't know, it says 30 over there, So we need to have that under consideration too. It's not only to reduce because we do the study for 2 blocks, say, these 2 blocks, you got to drive in 15 miles an hour. Just absurd, to me.
Certainly,
it makes sense or
and
not.
Chair Avagian and Commissioner Ortebegan, good points. And it's kind of tied into what Commissioner Bonston mentioned as well about the segments, right? How do we determine the segments? And so these segments are not short segments. They tend to be longer segments. And they change when the context of the street would change. So a good example would be Honolulu, right, near the Montrose Shopping Park. We talked about 2 different speeds there, from La Crescenta to Orangedale. That's 2 lanes in each direction, the wider portion of the street. And that one, we're recommending 30 miles per hour. But as you move easterly past Orangedale towards the Montrose Shopping Park, where the context changes, right, the speed changes. And so the proper signs are put up to advise the motorists, but not only the signs, again, there was a lot of thought that was put into the breakdown of the segments, that they're done at appropriate times when a driver sees a change in conditions.
I understand that. See, the thing is, a Montrose Shopping Park is a different dynamic. The lights are there. Everybody knows they're entering this area and everything else. It's only 3 blocks. So I understand if you want to make the 3 blocks 15 or 20 miles, and we're not still sure if that's, feasible for the people who come to the neighborhood, that's understood. But let's say from Mountain to, let's say you want to come down to beginning of Ocean View, right? It's one way. If you put like 4 different speed zones in there, that is not feasible to me. It needs to be at least break down in 2 pieces, and then, or, at some point when it turns, then you say, okay, now because you're turning, at least you can give a heads up to people that, okay, this part now it turns into, it's just like when you arriving to a school zone, it reduces to 15 miles an hour. Everybody knows that. But if you keep on every 2 or 3 blocks, we want to change the speed zone, that creates more confusion.
May I answer that? And this is just to kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong. So this is not something that the city of Glendale has come up with. It's a regulation that's out there. I don't know if I'm correct, but this is a California regulation that we follow. Am I correct?
In terms of the speed limit setting?
No, in doing the surveys.
In terms of during the surveys, yes, for particular types of streets.
Yes,
Setting the
correct.
segments,
Yes.
that was likely something that was configured since when the city determined the different 95 street segments that
Yes.
needed to have engineering and traffic surveys set.
So what I'm trying to say is, and I understand what you're trying to say, but as he mentioned, the segments aren't that short. So trying to kind of reinvent the wheel, saying we won't be able to do the segments, in a way is not gonna let us eventually get to the safety. So we're looking at this, and one of the segments we were looking at, which is not part of this time, but it was the previous time passing by Verdugo, is GCC. And I'm actually curious, I thought that would be considered school, but I guess it's not school, so it's not automatically 25 miles per hour. So, but I'm assuming that eventually it is possible that, when they go back and look at it, that segment will be shortened. If you look at the segment that they're changing, it's a pretty long distance of driving. And as drivers, we have responsibility paying attention. But all I'm trying to say is this is not something that just Glendale is doing. It's something that's done, you know, throughout the cities. It's a way for us to be able to assess. The city usually doesn't have the budget or the time to be able to do this every year for all the segments of the cities. If I'm incorrect, please correct me, but that's what my understanding is.
I understand that completely. What I'm trying to convey here is, you know, when you bring different, I think our job is to be able to create a marketplace of ideas so we can tap into the correct ones that it benefits everybody. We cannot just say, well, this is what it is, and this is what we're going to be doing. That would be imposition. I think when we here as representative of the cities are here, we're trying to come up with ideas, create this marketplace so everybody say, hey, I was thinking it, then you said it, then this might be true. You know what I'm trying to say? So we're trying to, you know, exchange ideas. That's how the best solution comes out of whatever we have. We should not only be looking at one point and I say, because the state says this, okay, then we're going to do this. No, I don't think that's correct. And we just need to know which one would work the best for our constituents and pay attention to it. And whatever reduce traffic, whatever increase the safety for everybody, then we can implement it the way that everybody's already frustrated. So we want to make sure something that everybody can benefit out of it. That's the only point I have.
I'll let the experts, the city engineer and those that know, comment on that, but thank you.
I feel like we're kind of crushed into your questions, so if you want to continue.
No, I'm
Commissioner
ready.
Bartoszal?
I'm ready to move forward with comments.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so
Chair Vaughan, can I offer one point of clarification? Because I think it has come up twice during the discussion. I just want to make sure the entire commission is aware that the recommended prima facie speed limit on Honolulu between Orangedale and Verdugo is 15 miles an hour. So if the commission were to approve staff's recommendation, it would be to recommend that the council adopt an ordinance setting that speed for that segment. There would certainly be time for future dialogue. This is a recommendation before it goes to the city council. Stakeholders would obviously have the opportunity to provide their input to the council, but that is a part of staff's recommendation for tonight. I want to make sure that that was clear and that any motion that you do consider with respect to Exhibit A reflect that on line 57, Glendale Boulevard should read Glendale Avenue. I just want to make those 2 points before you go into your deliberation.
May I just make one comment? Can we, before we make a motion on it or make a vote on that, can we make sure the Honolulu segment, because we talked about it, that it needs to be brought back to the Board of Directors of Montrose Shopping Park Association to get everybody else's, because we already talked about it. And my understanding was that one of the tools were to reduce the speed limit to 15 or 20 miles an hour. And I don't know if you had consent on that. So I just want to make sure that they will be notified before we implement the changes in there. And then by all means after that, if the 15 miles is what we decide to do, then we can move forward.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interject. I'm not familiar with the board, and I don't think they have the capability of or the capacity to give any kind of transportation-related, recommendation to council. That's why we are here, and I think our recommendation is what the council is going to approve. I understand that you know that's a concern for you because you're part of the shopping center, but I don't see myself allowing that because I have no idea what their background and knowledge of transportation is. And even if they do have a recommendation, I mean, they should have been here. This is the forum where they need to come and let us know that, hey, by the way, Transportation Commission, this is what we want, so please consider it. So that's my.
I just want Pastor Casanova, if you can chime in on that portion of it, so she'll have a better understanding exactly what the Montrose Shopping
I'm
Park
sorry
Association
again.
does.
The reason why this is a public meeting is for people, including the Montrose Shopping Center folks, to be here and voice their opinion. We cannot pass this meeting or do a halfway, advice to council because they are not present at this meeting. This never happens in any other meeting, and we wouldn't do it to council or any other commission. So that's how I see it. So if you're making a vote to go to that body, I am not okay with that.
Commissioner Ortebegian, to answer from the legal perspective, to answer your question, and this is more of a procedure question, but the commission could make as part of a motion a direction to staff to provide certain notification that could be part of the motion if it had a consensus of the commission. Obviously, the staff's recommendation is to include that speed limit. The motion could accept the new subsection C from your recommendation. Those are all options that you have. I just wanted to make clear, because it seemed to be an open question in your discussion whether that was a part of the recommendation. And so for my part, it was simply to clarify that that is a part of the recommendation. If you
That's
want
all
to
I
carve it
wanted.
out,
If I can add
if you
that to
want
it,
to
yes, sure.
provide other direction, that's within the commission's discretion.
Chair Vaughan, if I may. So ultimately, this is a step in that process, right? We are soliciting feedback from the commissioners. This is scheduled to go before the council on July 29th. So there's still opportunity for us to do additional outreach, additional engagement. But obviously, this is one of the steps that we're coming before the TBC to solicit your feedback, so that when we prepare our staff report and have the council consider the item, it's with the comments and questions that were brought up that we're able to address.
Thank you. So let's move forward. I would like to thank Mr. Casanova and Mr. Cortez for the presentation, and looking forward to next time maybe seeing Central, the other portion of Central and Kenneth Village. Thank you for bringing that up. That in the recommendation too for next one. So let's move forward. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation to go to the council?
I'd like to make the motion. I've been hearing the comments and concerns. I think a clean, as recommended motion is appropriate. So that's my motion, and if you want me to move into comments, I can.
Sure. It's,
I can
let's
second-
get a second.
I can second that, but I think there might be one other typo that I caught, but just check and make sure. Camino San Rafael, I think it's Cale Canta, not Conte. So that's an A, not an E. So just if you want to check on the spelling, I might be incorrect.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Bartosov, seconded by, so I have a second, right? Yes. So seconded by Commissioner Shabazian to let's go to the, to move forward. So let's go to roll call, I believe.
Do you mind if we make comments to clarify our votes before a
Sure,
roll
do we
call is
make the
made?
comment before we move to voting?
Now would be the appropriate time.
No, we do, okay, sure.
So I thank you, staff, for the presentation, and Mr. Cortez, welcome to the commission. I think it's my first time seeing you here. I am very much looking forward to these recommended changes. I think what AB 43 has done for cities throughout the state and for the city of Glendale is that it actually gives the city more local control. So oftentimes, with local government and local governance, we are usually complaining, or there's friction between local and state about state taking away local control. This is one of those opportunities that the city has where local control is given, more local control is given to the city of Glendale. And that allows you as professional staff to make informed decisions, with safety being the top priority, which I totally agree with and support. So I'm happy to see that that tool is now available to the city of Glendale, and we're able to insert more local context while making these decisions. And I'm very happy about that. And I think, you know, it was kind of glossed over. I think the impetus and the drive for this policy recommendation is that safety is a #1 concern for the residents of Glendale. The city of Glendale just did a scientific survey surveying the community about what their top concerns are here in the city. And of course, to nobody's surprise, traffic safety was the number one priority stated by the residents of Glendale. This has been reinforced over and over again. You know, almost 10 years ago when I was on the pedestrian plan task force, we had learned through that plan's surveying that again, the number one concern that residents had was actually specifically speeding on our local streets. So it's a theme that's been coming and going for many, many years. I served on the Transportation Commission a couple of terms ago, and I'm happy to be back to insert my local knowledge and expertise as a transportation planner. And I'm happy to see that this has come to our commission once and for all. So I look forward to the speed reductions. I think it's necessary to make our streets safer. And I'm very much looking forward to recommending to council to move forward with these speed reductions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for your comments, and I would just definitely second that. And I'm looking forward to have a safer city and convenient for everyone and all the residents. Let's move to voting. Roll call.
Commissioner Bartushov,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubagian,
Yes.
Commissioner Shahbazian,
Yes.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. It's been passed. So next item.
Item 7, informational report. 7A, Safe Route to School Program Update.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Arik Harmandan, and I am a Senior Traffic Engineer with the Department of Public Works. I'm here to present an update on Glendale's Safe Routes to School program, focusing on the upcoming Phase 6. In this presentation, I will provide a brief overview of the Safe Route to School program's history and successes through Phases 1 through 5, and then outline the plans for Phase 6, including its scope, key infrastructure improvements, timeline, funding, and our community outreach efforts. This update is intended to show how Phase 6 will expand our program to improve student, pedestrian, and bicyclist safety. Glendale initiated its Safe Routes to School program in 2013. Between 2013 and 2018, we completed Phases 1 through 5, which are sequential projects upgrading infrastructure around 24 schools within the city. The core goals of Safe Routes to School has always been to enhance pedestrian and bicyclist safety and to encourage more families to choose walking or biking for their trips to school. Each phase was done in close collaboration with Glendale Unified School District, school officials, parents, and neighborhood stakeholders. Next slide. To appreciate the scope of the program, it's important to note the breadth of schools we serve. Glendale Unified School District has 20 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 5 high schools, for a total of 29 campuses across Glendale and surrounding neighborhoods. Our Safe Routes to School program's mission is to benefit as many school sites as possible, prioritizing elementary and middle schools. Across Phases 1 through 5, the city successfully completed Safe Routes to School projects at 24 school sites citywide. The improvements installed included high visibility crosswalks, new ADA compliant curb ramps, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, also known as RRFBs, and curb extensions. The upcoming Phase 6 represents a comprehensive expansion of Glendale's Safe Routes to School program, building on the success of earlier phases. There are 3 primary objectives in Phase 6. First, we plan to serve all the remaining Glendale Unified School District school sites that were not included in Phase 1 through 5. Second, Phase 6 will revisit many of the earlier phase schools to upgrade those past improvements to current design standards and best practices. Third is to combine infrastructure improvements with education and outreach. This means alongside the physical construction, we will be working with schools on safety education, student and parent engagement, and awareness campaigns. Key partners include Glendale Unified School District officials, individual school principals, staff, PTA groups, and local community organizations. Before finalizing any plans, our team will meet with each school's administration. We want the improvements we designed to truly align with each school's needs and community expectations. Broader outreach will include a project website for Phase 6. This website will serve as a central hub for information. The city will post a project fact sheet, regular updates on progress, maps, and schedules for public meetings and construction timelines. In a greater effort to be proactive and inclusive, there will be opportunities for public comments and for commissioners and council members to provide guidance on the preliminary concept plans. The focus of the program is to make walking and biking more attractive for students. The following slides show typical improvements. This phase will include a broad toolkit of infrastructure enhancements, like crosswalk enhancements, like bulb outs, also known as curb extensions, which will shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians. Leading pedestrian intervals, also called LPIs, at signalized intersections, give pedestrians a few seconds of a head start before the traffic light turns green for vehicles. Traffic calming elements, including curb modifications, striping, and signage improvements that draw a driver's attention to the presence of students walking and biking. Continuing with the improvements, Phase 6 also addresses bikeway improvements like sharrows or shared lane markings, reminding drivers to share the lane and wayfinding signs that point to schools or guide cyclists along preferred bike routes to each campus. Where feasible, ADA and sidewalk upgrades will be incorporated to fill in sidewalk gaps along school routes and install new or upgrade ADA-compliant curb ramps at crosswalks. In tandem with the construction, Phase 6 includes updated suggested route maps showing the recommended walking and biking paths from surrounding neighborhoods to the school. This slide is an example of a suggested route to school map that we provide as part of the educational component. Each school will get a map similar to this, tailored to its local neighborhood. On the map, we show the inventory of existing and proposed street infrastructure like crosswalks, stop signs, and traffic signals. We also highlight the recommended walking and biking routes to the campus, typically using streets that have good sidewalks, lower traffic, and crossing guards. To give a visual sense of our engineering work, this slide shows an example plan drawing for a rectangular rapid flashing beacon installation near the Dunsmore Elementary School crosswalk. This is a typical design plan that our engineers prepare for each location. It details the layout of the crossing, where the crosswalk markings will be painted, where the RFB units will be placed on each side of the street, as well as signing, wiring, and other relevant structures, other relevant construction details. The image on the right shows the final constructed RFB location that includes sharrows, bulb outs, yield lines, and high visibility crosswalk. The estimated Safe Routes to School Phase 6 budget is a total of $5 million and is expected to be funded through Measure R. $500,000 is allocated for plans, specifications, and estimates, which include the design phase where we create engineering drawings, write specifications, conduct outreach, and develop the suggested route to school maps. $250,000 is set aside for construction support. The largest portion, $4.25 million, is dedicated to the construction itself. The design phase is estimated to start fall 2025 and will take roughly 1 year to complete. The construction phase is slated to begin in summer 2027, and we anticipate completing all construction by summer 2028. The goal is to finish before the end of school break to minimize the impacts when school resumes in fall. Thank you for your attention and support. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions the commission or members of the public may have.
Sure, Commissioner Ordobegan.
I love those curve extensions. I think they're extremely helpful. They're visible. They make cars go slower. So I'm a big fan of those. But I just noticed you mentioned $500,000 estimate. Can you just tell me what that is for? $500,000 for getting an estimate, or?
No, it's not getting an estimate. So it's $500,000 to actually do the plans, specifications, outreach. So the preliminary, before going out to construction, we would spend that money to either do part of the work in-house or consult the work out to identify not just from phases 1 through 5 which schools we need to revisit, but also the remaining schools, which schools that we would need to take a deeper dive and see what improvements are appropriate.
Yeah, those are very important. And do you know the time frame of implementing such a thing? What is it? Because I know, for example, on Ocean View Boulevard, they were going to do the 2 extensions on the bring it out. Took them like 6 years to do that. Is it going to take that long, or?
Well, the only thing I can answer is the estimated timeline that we have, that we showed in the previous slide. That's our goal. We're going to try our best to keep that and maintain that
But we
timeframe.
don't have like a year, 2, 3, nothing like that.
From the, if you can go back to the previous slide, it's about a year.
About a year, okay.
Starting summer 2027 and ending summer 2028.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question. Is this happening in conjunction with bicycle transportation plan? Because I noticed that a lot of things that are being maintained or improved also either have to do with bicycle transportation or they may be even not aligned. I don't know. How does this work?
So generally, most schools are located in or on local roads. And so for that, Sharrows would be the most appropriate, some kind of bike boulevard, which best case scenario would align with our bike master plan. But we would have to review the bike master plan and see which components do align with what we determined from the preliminary engineering portion of it, what's appropriate for each school.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
I noticed PSNE and all the fun things. Do we have any funds for PNED to actually do outreach before we get to the design? And just the reason I ask is it's good to hear what the community has, but I don't know if you have funds for it.
So outreach is actually a very large component of this, and
Okay.
it was my fault for not including it, but the PSNE portion should
Yes.
also include outreach.
So basically, we have PANED and then PSNE for this project, kind of, we would
Correct,
say.
it's kind of bundled together. I
Got it.
just didn't break it up,
Thank you so much.
of course.
Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question too about outreach? I'm presuming a large part of that is also the students and their families. So you are coordinating with Glendale Unified as part of that?
Correct, we would, whichever school we decide to, the appropriate improvements would be necessary, we would reach out to not just the principals themselves, but PTA and staff, and obviously work with Glendale Unified
Thank you.
as a whole.
Sorry, may I ask one more? I see that you have fall 2025, when we have the plans, starting. Is that when we're going to start outreach for this project? So I'm assuming we don't have an RFP out or a consultant in place yet. Sorry if I'm just getting ahead of myself.
It's okay. We do have a few options, but it just depends on, we can use our on-call contracts, or we could RFP it, and again, the Measure R budget, that still has not, it's not 100% confirmed yet, and our fiscal year budget hasn't been confirmed. So once those things get confirmed, then we would take the appropriate steps.
Thank you. I just realized that you did mention that it might be in-house. Thank you.
Okay.
One last question. I think it's New York where Clark Magnet High School is. That street is they drive really fast. Could part of these things, get implemented there to reduce speed? I don't know if do we have to go through all this process, or can you identify that there is somebody can get hit there? I don't know how it never happened so far, or has happened, I don't know about it. But there part of that street that could use all these things that you're trying to do, and could we implement it sooner than waiting a couple of years? Or?
So I can only speak based off of this program, and as mentioned before, we prioritize elementary and middle school, and the scope of the program is to make streets, specifically routes to schools, more walkable and more bikeable. And as long as the school is within the Glendale right-of-way and it meets all those conditions and criteria, then we would definitely take a look and add it to our scope, of course.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I have a few. Can we go back to the slide where we talk about the RRFB crosswalks? Yes, thank you. So I've brought this up with staff in the past. I thought this was an interesting mention in the staff report. You do not talk about pedestrian hybrid beacons, which for those of you who are not engineers or planners, it is a more advanced crosswalk signal that is proven to be more effective and is a safer option than what the RFB provides. So I am curious, are you including PHBs in your arsenal, in your toolkit for implementing near schools?
I believe it's a safe thing to say that we will explore as many options as we can. RFPs, oftentimes, they have a few design constraints. They're fairly large. They require a cabinet. And oftentimes, we would implement them if pedestrian volumes and collision rates match the level of mitigation that the Hawks actually do provide. So it depends, but to say that we will definitely or not exclude it, it's just going to be a case by case. But we will not rule it out. And yes, if it qualifies and it's the most appropriate condition for it, we will definitely take a look.
I think they mentioned earlier that it might be part of it on the earlier slide. I think you did mention that a hawk was gonna, I thought I saw hawks there on earlier slides. But, sorry, I don't want to interrupt your question.
Well, I'll just be transparent. I have been critical of the, in my opinion, overuse of RRFBs in the city of Glendale in relation to the usage of PHBs. So the PHB that comes to mind locally is the one at Glorieta Park. So it's a signal head with a mast arm that goes over the street and flashes and is a solid red and requires you to stop. It's not an advisory yellow flashing like what you see on the screen, which is off to the side of the roadway. So when this comes back and we're looking at it more closely, I am going to be scrutinizing where you've chosen to put RRFBs and whether or not those locations are eligible for PHBs. So I know there's quite a bit of latitude for local engineers to make their professional recommendation, and I'll be taking a very close look at that. And I'll be asking for your analysis and your surveys to make sure that we are in fact recommending to council the utmost safest possible signal type for that particular corridor.
As long as it's feasible and we can put it in our budget, we welcome any comments. So we definitely look forward to it.
Great, thank you. And then, so I'm curious, there was a timeline of, or sequence of events. I know you mentioned that the TPC will have the ability to provide input. I just want to clarify and make sure, is that technically part of the outreach process? Is your scope that's going to be recommended to council going to come to TPC for a formal recommendation? Or are you simply saying that the TPC, as part of the general public, will be able to chime in with their comments?
I believe currently our intent is we would have a open forum for the public, and the TPC and council and everyone is welcome to make comments there. Oftentimes, just as speaking personally, we feel like a more collaborative kind of a open session, open house is the best way to get all the ideas in at once. Yeah, if the TPC or the council requires or recommends or wants a separate occasion to discuss something specific, we're more than welcome to answer those questions. But the current intent is just to have an open house and invite everyone from the public.
Okay, great. And then two more, I think, quick questions. I was hoping to see a map of where improvements have occurred, both for phase 1 through 5, and if you have phase 6 locations in mind. I'm curious where that is in the city, where there have been improvements in the past, where they're proposed, and does that cover the full suite of schools, or are there future phases where we need to rely on to touch all schools in the city?
So we do have plans to develop maps specifically for phase 6 as part of the PSNE and part of the outreach. And again, as part of that, we will revisit all the schools done from phases 1 through 5. And as part of that, we'll take a full inventory of what was done to better understand what improvements, additional improvements we might need to make sure that they're up to current standards. So the map and the list of schools and the list of improvements as part of phases 1 through 5 and what we're proposing in phase 6 will all be done as part of the PSNE and kind of that outreach process. So as of now, we have some idea, but those maps have not been developed yet and will be developed soon.
Okay, so along those lines, do improvements in phase 1 through 5 plus phase 6 touch all schools in the city, or no?
That's our plan. And I can't tell you one way or another that yes, we will hit all 29 Glendale Unified School Districts or not, but that's our intent, correct.
Okay, one of the things, the only other question I'll ask in order to help move that question along is that, and the reason I'm asking is because I do want all schools to be touched. I don't think that we have the luxury of time, especially when it comes to the safety of our children. Are we looking at quick build options for phase 6? So I bring that up because curb extensions, PHBs, those kind of heavy improvements do cost a lot of money and they take a lot of time. Quick builds are far cheaper and, you know, could be just as effective, at least in the short term, while you cobble up additional money to make them more permanent. So is that considered in the suite of options, and or can they be?
I don't see why not. Again, I hate to limit myself and our staff to see what's possible, but you are correct. Quick build options can be very effective, and if it's appropriate to that specific location in school, I don't see why we wouldn't consider it. So yes, it'll be part of our toolkit, of course.
Great, thank you. That answers my questions.
Very good question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving to next one. Now, actually, we have a public comment on the phone, right?
Yes, we currently have one caller on the line. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. Caller number 1 is Cara Sergio. Can you hear
Cara
us?
Sergio. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes and you may start now.
Great, thank you. Thanks for this great presentation, Art. I'm trying to get a little bit of, even though I have my volume off. I am a 24-year resident of Glendale, raised both my children here, and was heavily involved with phase 1, 2, 3 of the Safe Routes to School program here in the city of Glendale, actually as a consultant to the city. I currently work for the school district as a school nurse, and my questions are, well, I can give you an answer first. All 29 schools were touched in prior phases of the project, and then there's been schools that have been circled back to in probably phases 4 and 5. My question is about the encouragement and education activities. This budget does not seem to include anything around education for students, encouragement events to get students and families comfortable with walking and biking. So I'd like to hear more about that. And then secondly, AB 321 was passed in 2008 to give the city an option to reduce speeds around school to 15 miles per hour. This has been brought up in the pedestrian master plan. It's been brought up in the bicycle master plans and still has not been implemented at any of our schools that I'm aware of. Have you guys considered looking at AB 321 to reduce speeds around our schools?
Those are great questions. I'm going to pass it over to our principal traffic engineer to help me answer that, please.
Give me all the hard ones. Hello to Cara. So regarding, I'll tackle the speed limit one first. It's something that we are aware of. We're taking a look at, I think, in this effort as we move forward with the Safe Route to School program. It would be good context as we reach out to the schools, the school district, the Transportation and Parking Commission, and the City Council. And certainly, if that is the direction that we want to go, we can certainly take a look at those opportunities to lower the speed limits around those areas. And can you repeat your question on the first part, Cara?
Sure. My question was about education and encouragement and whether or not there's an opportunity for more funding to support those critical components of an infrastructure project.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Thank you for repeating that. So we'll look at the funding. This is Measure R funding, and we do have to make sure that we follow the guidelines of what the funding is for. And if we have enough flexibility to expand to that component and doing the education and encouragement, we can certainly include those elements as well.
I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I just say something? I would really encourage our caller, sorry if I didn't catch your name, to be involved as we do the public outreach. It'll be great to give your feedback. I think that's what the city is looking for, and that's what Public Works Department wants. They want to hear from you, and I think those are all great comments that you can bring to the public outreach segments
you.
of the project. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Kara. And I became involved as a parent volunteer after a student fatality at Toll Middle School, and I was a consultant to the city for 5 years, so I have a lot of history.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Kara.
much for calling. Thank you, Kara.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's. No, we don't have any more callers, right?
No.
Okay, let's move to the next item. Oral communications.
Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. We do not have, there are no public comments at this time.
Okay, so let's move to item number 9, commission staff comments, updates. Anyone?
I had a couple comments. Do you mind pulling up this photo? This was shared with me not long ago. So this is right here around the corner from us at the corner of Glendale and Broadway. It kind of illustrates the challenge that some people have who, whether they need to or do for convenience or want to take transit, have a very hard time traversing the city, particularly in the high noon heat of the day and in the summers. So you can see the folks that are very clearly waiting for the bus to arrive are kind of very much confined to be standing essentially in front of business storefronts because that's really the only place where there's shade. I know that the city has, it might have been maybe a year ago where staff went to council to talk about various bus shelter opportunities to increase shade along particular corridors. This particular location, I think, is really important because this is a stop right at this intersection where the proposed BRT is going to come. And I know that there are improvements for the BRT corridor, which would include Broadway. And I don't know whether or not those improvements would include bus shelters or amenities on Glendale itself. So I'm just highlighting this location as an example, but I think we can find many examples like this throughout the city. I know that there's a heavy reliance on actual shelters, actual engineered, not buildings, but shelters to provide shade. But I am hoping that within the Public Works Department, we can find opportunities to create new tree wells and provide actual tree shade for this very reason. Having a large metal structure that it itself emanates heat and sometimes is not so suitable in very hot environments, tree shade would be very much valued. There is an example of a bus stop on Glendale. I think it's the cross street is Maple. There's a bus stop at that intersection, and on both sides of that bus stop are very mature jacaranda trees. And it's a beautiful way to provide shelter and also beautify the corridor. So I'm hoping that through the next phase of identifying what transit amenities or improvements are necessary in the city, that we remember this location and that we consider adding tree wells to the suite of options that we have as a city. That was one comment. And then my second and last comment is that I think it was at the last meeting I had talked about the importance of protecting left turn movements. I would like to see a list of intersections where we have left turn phasing, both protected only phasing and permissive left turn phasings. And the reason I'm asking for that information is because through my experience, walking, biking, and driving in the city, I find that there are not many protected only left turn phasing signals in our city. And yet those are the safest, it's the safest type of turn movement and signal operation for pedestrians. So if you're not familiar with the pedestrian master plan and its findings, one of the key collision types for pedestrians is that left turn movement that occurs at intersections. So I, as a pedestrian, I'm particularly interested in finding ways to make our streets safer. And one of the easiest, most straightforward ways to do that is to improve the condition of the intersection and how it's operated. So I'd like to formally ask that I see that list. A part of that would be nice if perhaps you're already working on upgrading some of those left turn phasings to protected only. I'd like to see that. And if not, maybe in the future, the TPC could make a formal recommendation as to where we can make those upgrades, how they tie into the Vision Zero plan and the pedestrian master plan to make those advancements and make our streets safer for pedestrians. So
Make the recommendation now. I think it's a great idea.
I don't want to strong arm staff, but I'm making the request that that information be made available, and maybe in the future, a staff report will come out of that and perhaps an action from the commission.
Thank you very much for bringing it up.
So, Chair Avagian, if I may?
Sure.
So as we've tried to do as in our previous commission meetings, so ultimately we're here to serve at the will of the commission. So if it is ultimately a decision by the majority of the commission, we're happy to bring back agendized items, as opposed to just one commissioner kind of expressing their thoughts, opinions. We want to formalize that process, similar to the way the city council does that. So if there is a desire to bring back an item, obviously we would have to assess the amount of work that would be required for us to bring that back, so that we can give you a sense of timing. But ultimately, if that's the commission's desire, then we can eventually put an item together for whether it's informational or an action item that will eventually go before the city council.
I think what Commissioner Bartosov brought up, great comments. Great comments. I think we should make a recommendation. I'll second it if you want it. I think this is something very important. Every one of them, you actually saw it. Those are very important elements. So I'm all for it. So
Can we agendize an item during this portion?
You can, Chair Vagian, and under the commission's governing rules, a request for a report back rather than an informal request for information offline requires a second. It doesn't require a vote. So that's what I understood Commissioner Ortebagian to be saying. So the request has been made for a future agenda item supplying the information.
Perfect. We don't need voting or anything, or roll call, nothing, right? Just
No
a
roll call.
motion and a second. Okay.
Well, if it's gotten to that point, I do want to specify that I would like for it to be an action item. I do not want it to be a report-only item. I've been around long enough to understand the difference between the two and what impact either one has. And if I'm open to that being a phased approach, if the commission needs to be educated and informed about where the left turn signals are, where the opportunities are for improvement, I'm willing to take it in 2 meetings if staff finds that that's the appropriate way to do it. But ultimately, I would like for us to make an official recommendation, again, based on the staff report and what findings are presented to the commission.
action item it is.
So Commissioner Bartoshov, I would just suggest for the commission's clarification, because as I'm listening to the discussion, making sure that staff has a clear understanding of what the commission's looking for. It may be at this juncture that the action you're taking is to potentially pass a motion providing direction. I don't think that anything has been discussed here that would go beyond that at this juncture. So it does sound like you could take it in turns and potentially 2 turns, or the action that would be agendized would very likely be a motion providing direction.
Thank you so much.
Any further, nothing nothing regarding this, right? We just
I
move
have a
forward with
question,
this.
actually, if you don't
Yeah,
mind,
no. I
Chairperson.
I wanted to make sure that this motion and the second is set and done, and so we don't need to add anything to this, and then
No, procedurally, to request so to the director's earlier comment, a commissioner certainly is welcome to make a request informally for information, but to agendize a future discussion under the procedural rules of the commission, it requires a second. It does not require.
because Commissioner Bartoshov clearly mentioned that he wants this to be an action item rather than a report. So I wanted to make sure that if we're changing that, if there's anything else has to be done after it's been stated that he wants it to be an action item.
No, I think that that's been clear, and I think that was echoed by Commissioner Ortebegian as well.
That's all I was asking. Commissioner Shalbazian?
Thanks for that. I guess I was just trying to make sure I understood. The action item would depend on what the report would be? Is that what you were going for? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I don't want to be so prescriptive. I think, and I'll further elaborate that my intent is to address what I think is the #1 contributing factor to pedestrian collisions, which is permissive left turn phasing. And so I would like for staff to come back to the commission and share what their findings are around that particular policy approach and their recommendations on how we can improve the safety of pedestrians with that specific phasing in mind.
Thank you.
And I welcome staff if you have clarifying questions or you feel like you need more information from us. I welcome that so that there are no surprises on either side.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to at least provide our perspective on what we're doing right now and might help in the decision as well as how to direct us to move forward. So currently, the Public Works was successful in the Highway Safety Improvement Program Cycle 11, and we obtained some grant funding. And there are several locations within that funding that have already been identified to improve with protected left turn phasing as a countermeasure to address the collision types and so forth. So we would be able to report on that to give you that information. We also have various capital improvement projects that are in the works currently, including Verdugo Road South, Glendale Avenue, north of Broadway to the freeway. And those projects are going to include a traffic study where we're going to study the recommendations that were in the citywide pedestrian plan. So those locations that did experience the pedestrian challenges, we're going to study those further for potential of protected phasing, specifically at the locations, for example, that we're asked to study for removal of left turn lanes and right turn lanes. We're going to study those, so maybe the best opportunity is to remove the lane, or maybe another opportunity would be to put in the left turn phasing. So that's going to be studied in more detail. In terms of staff coming back, that might be an approach to take, is that we come back and give you a presentation with the various projects that we have in the works that are going to be either implemented or evaluating the left turn phasing.
That's interesting. I guess I would like to see that, and that might help inform my thoughts on whether to proceed with this motion. I do know from just my own understanding that those capital improvement projects are far and few in between, and for us to solely rely on that program to implement left turn protected only phasing, I don't think is adequate and doesn't meet the moment of addressing traffic safety. So, you know, I'm imagining a scenario in which you go out and apply for funding for a specific set of, you know, protected only signal improvements, for example, so that these improvements are not specifically tied to capital improvements, which don't happen very often, as you know. And perhaps by using another avenue or channel, we can get those improvements done a little bit faster. So, you know, that may be my recommendation, you know, if perhaps. But I am curious to see what the city is currently working on, how many left turn phasings would be addressed as part of those projects and the timeline of those projects. That might be informative for the commission.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Very good comment. I like that.
Thank you. I actually would like to thank city staff and especially Mr. Casanova for always like bearing with our questions, being patient. Sometimes I ask a question and I'm like, oh God, what he's thinking right now about me. So thank you very much. And I also wanted to mention something because the last 2 months was very confusing regarding the commission appointments and changes and stuff. And we had a commissioner, Eli Lester, who left the position, and we didn't have an opportunity to thank him for his service because we didn't know what's happening. So I just wanted to take this minute to thank him because I haven't seen him around. Hopefully I'll see him at maybe other commissions or any other city organizations because I truly valued his feedback and the service that he did to the community. So thank you to Commissioner Eli. And then last but not least, I wanted to mention about the tough times around the world that's happening right now, and especially in our community. Me, myself, coming from an immigrant family background, totally understand the fear and uncertainty a lot of people are facing right now, and hopefully hoping to see justice, compassion, and more common sense leading to better humane solutions that people had to people who have been impacted. That's it for today, and I would like to adjourn the meeting.
Chair Vaughan, if I may, before, so I just want to notify the commission that we will be surveying your availability for a special meeting in July. As previously stated at the last meeting, we are working on a road design policy that we want to share the current draft with the commission before going to the city council. So tentatively, we have that penciled in for July 28th, but staff will be sending a formal email to request availability.
Thank you.
Tentatively, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hernandez. Okay.
Do we let you know right now if you're available? Because I'm not available. That's okay. I think you just need quorum even if I'm not there.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. It's
A motion.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by
Thank you.
Commissioner Shalbarzian, seconded by Commissioner Odovegian to adjourn the meeting at 7:43 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.